On January 15, 2014, Beijing police arrested Ilham Tohti from his home and closed the Uyghur Biz website he built. They held him in pretrial detention for 8 months before sentencing him to life imprisonment. The website, also known as Uyghur Online, was published in Chinese and Uyghur and focused on social issues as well as building understanding between the Han Chinese people and the Uyghur people. The website had contributors from both Han Chinese and Uyghur backgrounds. You would think that authorities would do anything to promote this kind of work that diffuses tensions between Uyghurs and Han Chinese. But no, in reality and in a nonsensical decision, the Chinese authorities sentenced the founder to life imprisonment for promoting separatism and violence. Several foreign governments and human rights organizations protested the sentence. The European Union released a statement condemning the life sentence as unjustified. Then U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said the U.S. was concerned by the sentencing and called on Chinese authorities to release Ilham Tohti, along with 7 of his students. Ilham Tohti is a member of the Uyghur Pen Center and an honorary member of the Independent Chinese Pen Center and Pen America. He was awarded the 2016 Martin Ennals Award for Human Rights Defenders. That was 2 years after his arrest. In 2017, the city government of Weimar in Germany announced that Tohti would receive its Human Rights Award, and Liberal International, an international federation for liberal and progressive democratic political parties, awarded Tohti its prize for freedom in The Hague. And in 2019, the European Parliament awarded Tohti its Sakharov Prize for freedom of thought. With countless awards given to this economic professor, no one has any information about his well-being, his health conditions in the past 11 years. You're listening to The Divide. My name is Iris Xu.
My name is Jewher Ilham. I am Uyghur. I might have many hats. I am an Uyghur activist because my father was put in prison by the Chinese government, and I started doing advocacy work since then. I'm also an author. I'm also a labor rights researcher. I was a dancer, so I have many passions and goals, yet I had many passions and goals, yet I was forced to start this advocacy journey in order to get the people that I care about to be released by the Chinese government from whether it's camp or prison.
Jewher Ilham was forced to separate with her father, Ilham Tohti, in 2013 at the Beijing International Airport.
My father, Ilham Tohti, first, he was an Uyghur economist. He was a renowned scholar, and also many people call him an activist, although for many time he had clarified he didn't want to be called as a political activist, and because his intention was never political. He wanted to help, and he wanted to provide solution, and he's a fixer. And he said, I'm just a scholar. I'm just sharing my scholarly research and findings. Hopefully my academic findings can help the people. He was also a businessman as well, while being a professor. He's a man with a huge heart and very brave. He knew he was getting into prison. He knew he was going to be arrested because the Chinese government had harassed our family for years, putting us in house arrest, and however, he never stopped. He continued his academic advocacy, and he continued being involved in different charity work. He continued writing, publishing, including establishing the blog called uygurbiz.org, which was one of the main reasons why the Chinese government started going after my father in a really intensive way. And yeah, that's my father. And as a father, my father raised me. My parents were divorced when I was very little. We had a very close bond. He was the one that braided my hair, washed my clothes, cooked for me, and while I was a baby, he was the one that wrapped me inside his old leather jacket, and like until now, the leather jacket probably still have the pee stains from the baby Jewher. And yeah, that's a little bit about my father.
Jewher, now who works as a researcher, is perhaps the best person to tell us how important her father's work is.
Well, the website now, the archive is available on Google, so people are free to look at all the articles that's been previously published. You will not find anything that is illegal in the Chinese constitutional law standard. And it did provoke thought for sure. It wasn't illegal. It definitely raised questions and conversations and dialogues that were never had publicly before. And that's what concerned the Chinese government the most. People oftentimes had questions, especially Han Chinese communities. They had those stereotypes of Uyghur people being backwards, poor, uneducated, pickpockets, and women are exotic, beautiful, and that they don't want to marry Han Chinese. Those are the stereotypes. And that Uyghur people like to sing and dance and not work. Those were the stereotypes. And that Uyghur people are great entertainers. Those were the stereotypes. However, and also there is this resentment towards the Uyghur people as well from the Han Chinese community, because not only Uyghurs, all ethnic minority groups in China, legally they do enjoy some benefits, for example, that the Han Chinese people don't have. For example, like extra points in college entrance exam. So in Beijing standard, it will be 10 extra points. And in certain states, it will be like 40 or 50 extra points compared to like general point, the total points were like 750. That might sound like, oh wow, that's actually quite a lot of points. Yet what people failed to understand and never had the conversation, as I mentioned, the website raised dialogues and fostered created this platform for people to freely exchange and actually to inform each other and to share their resentment, their answers, and their curiosities. And those kind of issues were raised. Why Uyghur region is so rich, yet why were Uyghur people so poor? Is it because Uyghur people are not hardworking? Is it because they were not intelligent? Those are the questions many people had raised, and why Uyghur people are not grateful even though they had all these benefits from the Chinese government. Why are they not happy from of the Chinese government? So those, Han Chinese people would have those questions, and it's justified, honestly, if your state-imposed media only feeds you information of how the people are bad and the government is good, and if there's no alternative sources of media and information, it is only natural. And when you don't have access to social media like Facebook, Twitter, you don't have access to searching engines like Google, because all of these are banned in China. How do people hear stories of people who are living thousands of miles away from you? And especially the Uyghur region is very far away from mainland China, mainland cities. So most of the Han Chinese people have never met an Uyghur person in their whole lives. All their information is from state-backed media. Then my father raised a question, answered some of those questions, because he actually had a degree in economics and also geography. So he actually explained things in anthropology and geographical viewpoint, and he showcased that Uyghur region is not poor, and it's actually full of natural resources like gold, gas, uranium, and that makes a country very rich, and that actually secured the Chinese GDP in many ways and prevented it from being fallen behind in a global strategic viewpoint. And yet Uyghur people are indeed, a lot of them are very poor, not because they're not hardworking. In fact, most of the Uyghur people are multilingual and extremely hardworking and fast learners, yet they're prevented and stripped away from job opportunities just because of their ethnic backgrounds. And there are job posts that literally, no hiding, just says, we do not want Uyghurs, Tibetans, Mongolians, we do not want Hui. So those were like the few major ethnic minority groups in China. And you will see, even if you graduated from prestigious universities, you will not be able to get a job compared to someone who might have way lower experience and credentials than you, just because of your ethnic background. And also, so he provided those proof with evidence and receipts. And he also addressed the college extra points, which is, in China, people take it very seriously. Unlike the SATs here, where you can take as many times every few months as you can in the West, or like a TOEFL or IELTS exam that we know of. In China, most people view the college entrance exam as the one and only chance of your life, whether it's from the lower class financially or higher class. That is your one chance for a brighter future. That's most of, at least in my generation, that's how people viewed the Chinese college entrance exam. And yet many people were not satisfied with the policy of ethnic groups who were given extra points just because of their ethnicity. However, in the Uyghur region's case, for example, I was born and raised in Beijing. We were having official English education, Chinese education, mathematics. We have started at the age of 2.5 years old. That's when we started learning alphabets and everything. And we had access to chemistry, biology, all these classes starting from middle school. Yet in the Uyghur region, because their lack of infrastructure, the government never provided professional and adequate infrastructure for the educational system. Majority of the schools in the Uyghur region, students do not even get to learn alphabet until they're in high school. Yet they are expected to compete in the same exam levels. So even if you give me 100 extra points, which is not the case at all, how can people compete when you are starting from ground zero and other people are already 16 years ahead of you in terms of education? So it's people are losing at the starting point already, and yet those were never explained to the majority of the population in China. So there always been resentment from the Han Chinese side towards the Uyghurs. And in Uyghurs' perspective, the Uyghur region, the full name in Chinese, official full name is Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Yet, do Uyghurs really have its own autonomy? What is it really Uyghur region anymore? In 1975, the Uyghur population in the Uyghur region were over 75%. Yet now, it had dropped to 40%. Majority of the population in the Uyghur region now became Han Chinese. So is it really Uyghur Autonomous Region now? Majority of the jobs, especially the well-paid, high-income jobs, have been stripped away. So Uyghur people cannot even get jobs in their own home and cannot get jobs outside of their own home either. The Uyghur language is completely different from Mandarin Chinese. Uyghur language is it's a Turkic language, so it's about 60% same to Turkish and about 90% same to Uzbek. Mandarin Chinese is a completely different language system. Most of the Uyghur people are expected to learn Mandarin Chinese in school. So you're competing with Han Chinese people in their language without a fair educational system, without a fair job market. And how can you expect to compete? Yet Uyghur people are blamed for not having jobs, blamed for not being educated, blamed for the very mistakes that the Chinese government imposed on the Uyghur people. So those were the things that my father had exposed in his websites, and that gained lots of tractions both within China and internationally. And because of before my father, not many academics even thought about studying the Uyghur region, to visit the Uyghur region to learn more about the daily beings of living experiences of the Uyghur people. And because of my father, it increased the amount of people's interest in the Uyghur region, and that really concerned the Chinese government, because the Chinese government, they do not want people to learn the truth. They would like to create ethnic division between peoples, and instead of unity. And because when there's division, then there's more control. It's easier to control. And divide and conquer, that's the thing that we always hear, right? And it has worked for a very long time. My father's idea was always promoting ethnic understanding. He always believed Every conflict in the world has started because of lack of understanding on the other side. When you do not know, you fear. When you don't understand, you want to attack or you want to defend yourself because you think the other side is the evil other side. But that's not what he wanted to do. He wanted to create a bridge between the Uyghur and Han Chinese, whom were stripped away from the communication path and tools before. And so, yeah, that's why you see you saw multiple attempts of, from the Chinese government on shutting down his website and on silencing him. They tried to raid our homes. They tried to house arrest us multiple times. Sometimes we would be house arrested for a month. Starting from when I was in middle school, we were targeted by the Chinese government. I would get picked up from school by a minivan full of police into a suburb of, and transferred me to a suburb of Beijing, and we would be held incommunicado for a month. And that was a normality for my life. We would go on our way to a shopping mall or even a supermarket for buying rice. We would be followed by Chinese police. And those were normality. Even on the day, February 2nd, 2013, when we were leaving for the airport, our flight wasn't until 10 or 11 a.m., but we left home at 3 a.m. because we were fearing for the Chinese government's following us and preventing us from heading to the airport. And we did get to the airport safely, and we got our boarding passes, we checked our bags. However, they still they made it there, and my father was prevented from getting on the plane, and he never made it out of the country. Since then, he was actually sentenced to life imprisonment in September 2014 under so-called separatism related charges, yet they cannot find any proof still until now to really justify how was any of his actions considered separatism. He revealed truth and made people rethink of every information that the Chinese government had published. Maybe was that considered his crime? He used he tried to interview people, write about the truth with receipts and evidence. Was that his crime? He tried to give voices of people who have been silent for so long with his platforms. Was that his crime?
After listening to Jewher, I think I have a better understanding of Professor Ilham Tohti's work. And I started to browse the Uyghur Biz website and found this beautifully written article by one of his students, who was also put in prison by the Chinese authorities, along with Professor Ilham Tohti. The article was written in Chinese, and it is titled, "My Little Sister, You Have to Continue Your Education." It was written by an older brother to his younger sister, explaining the importance of education to Uyghur girls, at the same time addressing the gender inequality in the Uyghur culture, as well as his family's underlying fear that education may not lead to good employment prospects. And it baffles me that the Chinese government considered this work separatist. Professor Ilham Tohti, along with his students, were arrested and sentenced to prison for contextualizing the tensions between Uyghurs and Han Chinese. And for Jewher, Professor Ilham Tohti is not just an economist. He is also her father. I asked her if she could send a message to her father, what would it be?
If he was sitting right here, I probably wouldn't really talk with him because I know he will be exhausted, but I will cook him a very warm, hearty meal of his choice, of his favorites. And I will cook for him every day until he's ready to be the Ilham Tohti again, and to be the scholar or the fighter or the activist or the economist, whoever he wants to be again, but just not the prisoner of the Chinese occupation. But if he was listening to this message in the prison, not in front of me, then it will be, I will never, ever give up in any circumstances. I will always fight. I will forever fight for you, Dad.
Thank you for listening to The Divide. Next week, we continue our conversation with Jewher as she talks about the last time she saw her father.
The last time I saw my father was on February 2nd, 2013 at Beijing International Airport.
This episode is produced by Radio Taiwan International.